and welcome to our Q3 2019 Concall. In line with the first two quarter results, our third quarter performance continues to be strong, supported by global market conditions, global steel sector growth, pricing and demand of electrodes. According to the latest data released by the World Steel Association, the world steel production grew by about 4.6% last year versus compared to last year, which was 1,810 million tons. Similarly, the steel production last year, excluding China, also grew by about 2.5%, while China's steel output hit a record high of about 925 million tons, up by about 6.6%. China's electric arc furnace steel production growth remains strong in line with the Chinese government's push to replace polluting steel capacities, and as per our information, electric arc furnace production last year has actually doubled from about 6% of their total steel to close to 12%, which is expected to be around 20% by 2020. This is in line with what the Chinese government's policy announcement was when they announced certain closures of large blast furnaces, induction furnaces, due to pollution reasons. China is pushing for more and more incentives to boost domestic demand of major steel consumption sectors like infrastructure, automotive industries, and the white goods. Their export of steel continues to decline since large capacity shutdown initiated by them in early 2017. After declining by about 30% in 2017, we see a further decline of another 8% in 2018. However, the scrap prices, which is a major raw material for electric arc furnace industry, have actually declined by about 10% since August 2018, whereas iron ore and coke, which are the two major raw material sources for the blast furnace industry, have gone up by about 20% and 17% respectively. Iron ore prices continue to increase due to declaration of force majeure at one of the large mines in Brazil. This should help electric arc furnace economics and boost production in the immediate future. Now coming to India, we became the second largest producer of steel in middle of 2018 when we overtook Japan as to become the second largest producer. The steel production in India grew by about 5%, which stood at about 106 million tons against 101 million tons in 2017. However, the steel prices in India, after declining by about 16-17% in the last 4 months, are now showing signs of improvement in the last few weeks, where we are seeing some sort of a bouncy and some sort of a price increase taking place on the steel. In the last quarter, as we all know, the world has gone through some major geopolitical changes with China-US trade agreement and the uncertainty about what happens in early March when the deadline put by the US on the tariffs take place, and lately more so because of the uncertainty on the Brexit. A significant development during this quarter has been the complete stoppage of our exports to Iran due to US sanctions. Sales to Iran comprised of about 7 to 8% of our total business in the past few years, and we have now to look for some alternate market to replace this tonnage. Having said that, we believe the electric arc furnace steel production in the world, excluding China, will still grow at about 2 to 3% on a compounded growth basis. This is where our market is, this is where we sell most of our ultra-high power electrodes. And keeping this in view, and also keeping in view that currently we believe the demand supply and the production side and the demand side is more or less in balance, with about 700,000 tons being the demand and 700,000 tons being the capacity for ultra-high power electrodes. So keeping in this mind, we continue to carry on with our expansion, which we had announced about 2 months ago. The work has actually begun. We are in the process of now finalizing certain major orders for some of the critical equipments where the lead time is as much as about 2 years. Due to sudden and untimely demise of our friend, our COO and CFO about 3 weeks ago, Mr. Rastogi, we have made certain changes in the last 10 days or so. I would now hand over the floor to our newly appointed CFO, Gulshan, and to take you through the rest of your queries, I'll be supported by our newly appointed COO and the CMO, Mr. Manish Gulati. So over to Gulshan now. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, friends. For the quarter ended December 2018, HEG recorded revenue from operations of rupees 1865 crore as against 1794 crore in the previous quarter, a jump of nearly 4% quarter-on-quarter and nearly 121% year-on-year for the same period last year. EBITDA, including other income, which stood at 563 crore in the corresponding quarter of previous year, have increased to 1351 crore, an increase of nearly 140% year-on-year. The company reported a net profit of 867 crore in quarter 3 as against profit of 889 crore in the previous quarter and rupees 342 crore in the corresponding quarter of last financial year. Since turnover is a factor of both volume and prices, we are happy to inform that the company has been able to achieve a healthy growth in both the aspects. Net sales and also the segment results in the power segment are lower in 9 months of current year versus the corresponding period of last financial year, as we have been able to negotiate a mutually beneficial term with a government utility company and replace part of our high-cost self-generated power, which is thermal, with a power purchase from the State Electricity Board. This step has not only reduced the volume of captive generation and transfer to graphite, but also reduced the average realization in power segment, as the revenue in power segment is booked based on the corresponding rate of power defined by the state and utilities. This step has had a favorable impact on the overall cost of power consumed in the graphite segment. The increase in annual employee benefit expenses over the same period of last year is primarily on account of employee-related incentive schemes based on the performance of the company, as well as the commission payable to the chairman under his contractual terms of the appointment. The company is debt-free and has been handling the treasury operations to the tune of nearly 1,900 crore as on date. Buyback is on, and we had filed an application to SEBI on 6th of February 2019. Post-approval, it is a matter of 30 days to complete the buyback process. With this background, I would request questions from the participants.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may please press star, then 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star, then 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. To ask a question, please press star, then 1. The first question is from the line of Anubhav Sahu from MC Research. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. My first question is on the Iran thing, sir. In the quarter gone by, did we export anything to Iran? Has the sanction already in effect, or will the impact will be seen this quarter? Yeah.
Yes. See, there was a wind down period of 90 days which ended on 6th of August, and there was another 90-day final wind down period which ended on 4th of November. So our product, graphite, export had to be stopped by 6th of August, which we have. So, we are not exporting anything to Iran now.
Okay. And so the other countries which are exporting to Iran, have they been impacted? I mean, do you have any news on that? The China being a major exporter to Iran, is China also? Yeah.
See, China, I think, continues to do from this route and that route, but I don't think that anybody of the major players like Japanese or Graftag is exporting anything to Iran.
Okay. So, sir, coming to Ultra HP prices, which have softened a bit. So, do you think that it is mainly because of the slowdown in end market that is steel, or is it because of the interim oversupply due to Iran factor, or maybe the factor which you probably mentioned, if I got it right, is that the China graphite electrode production has a little ahead of the capacity addition as far as EAF is concerned?
Yes, that is what we think. That is what we think. That's right. So there is if you look at the long term, look at demand in the long term, it continues to grow. Now these are what is happening now are like corrections. Like there was a lot of panic buying last year. The prices have shot up to $20,000, $25,000. So that spike is now behind us. Now we are in a era of more stable pricing at an elevated level. So pricing of UHP remains strong. While HP we'll discuss later. There we have some issue from Chinese side. But UHP we are very confident and we believe. And if you look at our peer group, if you look at the results which have come from Tokai Carbon and Nippon Carbon and others, you will see that they are also almost echoing the same thoughts as we have, that UHP pricing is going to remain strong.
Okay, that's great, sir. So one more last question on the raw material prices. We know your commentary on the needle coke. Other than needle coke, how are the other raw material prices are behaving? And do the ratio, the contribution of needle coke in our raw material, which was earlier 2/3, has that ratio changed anyway because of that?
See, along with this electrode prices, certain raw materials had also gone up, and we expect a decline on them as well. They do not. The needle coke itself comprises about 35% of our production, and then the next cost is electricity. The other things like pitch and metallurgical coke are add to a very small number, but they were also on the rising spree. And now with this, electrode pricing getting stabilized, we expect the pitch prices and other coke prices to also fall and normalize, I would say.
Okay, so sir, I would assume that now the ratio which the needle coke has in the raw material prices only, so the raw material cost has also changed over the period. Earlier it used to be 2/3 of what the raw material we used to consume for electrode. Is there any material change in that assumption?
No, are you talking about a product mix or something?
There is no change in that.
Mostly okay. Okay, sir. That's all from my side. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vishal Chandra from MK Global. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Sir, my first question is with respect to the contribution from the UHP grade in the EBITDA vis-a-vis the HP grade.
You see, obviously, as Manish just explained, we produce about 75 to 80% of our production on the UHP grade, where until the last quarter we haven't seen any sort of a demand slackness or the prices. So so answer to your question is, it has more or less remained where it has been in the past couple of quarters, but on the non-UHP side, the high power as they call in China, there we are seeing some substantial weakening because it seems, there is no data to support what I am saying, but I am just guessing that if you remember about 2 years ago in 2017 when China had taken this step of closing about 140 million tons of polluting steel plants like blast furnaces and large blast furnaces and induction furnaces. they had announced that electric arc furnace, which used to be about 6% of their total steel, would go to about 20% by 2020. And then they had also given the breakup as to how and by when they expect this 6 to reach 20. So in line with that, in 2018, to the best of whatever we have heard, is that they have reached 12%, which means the 50 million tons of electric arc furnace that they produced in 2016 or 15 has doubled to about 100 million tons. And if they are on track for the next 2 years, this number should be somewhere in the region of 150 million tons. So 50 million tons going to 150 in about 4 years' time. So which obviously means that their electrode demand will increase by 3 times. And as we have been explaining in all our Concalls, China produces practically 100% of electrodes, which is the non-UHP. What the world calls non-UHP and UHP, so Chinese electrodes will qualify for practically 100% in the non-UHP segment. And in line with that, the size of furnaces, the capacity, and the power that they need in the newly built electric arc furnaces which they are building, they require the same non-UHP electrodes which they have been using for last many years. So obviously, if the steel capacities have doubled and they are likely to go up by another 50 million tons in the next 2 years, so in order to meet that demand, their existing graphite capacities have also to double, or let's say become 3 times in the next 2 to 3 years' time. So what we believe is that there has been probably a mismatch where the capacities of existing non-UHP electrode making in China, those capacities have probably come maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months earlier than the newly built greenfield steel plants. So in a nutshell, what we are probably assuming is that the electrode capacities have come in earlier than the new steel capacities are coming in. So there is probably a time lag of maybe 6 to 9 months before this extra capacity of electrodes catches up with the new steel plants which are coming up. Because as we have seen, their steel production has gone up. Their steel production in 2018 has gone up, and most of that increase has to be electric arc furnace because they're not building any new blast furnaces anymore. So it is it's a matter of time, according to our guesstimate, is that by the time in the next 6 to 9 months when they add another 30, 40 or 50 million tons of electric arc furnaces, this mismatch of timing that we spoke about, so these electrodes which have started coming into the market will find a place of consumption.
Okay, got it. So the next question was with respect to the capex that you have announced. If you could just help us on where we are with respect to the capex and what is the expected timelines and the funding pattern. I'm assuming it would be completely internal accruals.
Yeah, the funding will be internal accruals, and there has been no change. We had announced this sometime in early December. The cost remains at about 1,200 crores, and the duration is 3 years.
Right. And how much we have spent so far?
Very little. I mean, we have just started the construction. We have just cleaned up the site, and we have just appointed a consultant. And we are just about to start placing orders. So some reasonable numbers will be, I mean, the real capex is going to start now. I mean, for the time being, this was basically a very small preparatory expenses that we have done.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Abhisar Jain from Centrum Broking. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sir, good afternoon, and congratulations for a good set of numbers in Q3. I think almost best in the industry for this quarter. Sir, my question is on the needle coke supplies. So there was some debottlenecking that Phillips 66 had taken in calendar year 2018. So if you can provide some update on that, and then the outlook for the needle coke supply for calendar year 2019.
Yeah, they have done that, and a major part of that capacity is on stream. And on that basis, we do expect some improvement. We do expect to get more and more coke going forward.
Right. And, sir, this capacity debottlenecking was around 50,000 tons, is it?
We don't know the exact number. It could be somewhere in that region. It can be anywhere between 35 to 50,000. It takes a lot of time for the needle coke producer to stabilize that capacity.
Right, sir. And sir, other than that, there has been no change in the needle coke supplies from the other suppliers as such, right? Given the change in industry dynamics and the high needle coke prices also.
No, nobody talked about any debottlenecking except one particular refinery of Phillips 66.
Right. And so, sir, on that basis, as you mentioned, so you expect to get, higher allocation for FY20 as a fiscal year. Based on needle coke availability, we can actually do more production year on year. Is that understanding correct?
No. Obviously, if there is more needle coke available in the market, it will be available to everybody. So everybody should get a share of this 30, 35, 40,000 tons, whatever they are able to produce.
Mm-hmm. Right. And as such, to that extent, we can expect to be producing higher, right, sir?
Yeah, that's a fair estimate.
Sure, sir. And sir, any indications on the needle coke contracts? I believe for H1 CY19 it's already settled, and given the recent trends in the industry in terms of the softening of the prices, though for UHP they have not softened dramatically, but still, any outlook for how the negotiations in needle coke could pan out going ahead?
You see, currently these negotiations, these prices are frozen for on a semi-annual basis.
Right.
So obviously the prices are frozen till June, and it's too early to speak about what happens in the second half.
Mm-hmm. And sir, for the first half, the price increase was approximately how much?
You see, without going into specific numbers, I mean, it is somewhere in the region of $4,000.
Understood. And sir, in terms of the Chinese electrode exports, so while we understand that the quality might not be comparable and is not comparable, but what we've been seeing is, of whatever quality they are exporting, there seems to be a very significant increase even in CY18, and there was some increase, I believe, in CY17 also. Just wanted to understand is that where would this be getting consumed, because some of the furnaces beyond a point would not be able to take the non-UHP electrodes, if I'm not wrong.
No, you're right. I mean, you see, last year, if you will remember around this time, there was a lot of pressure from the government. There were lots of talks about putting an export duty on electrodes and things like that. And the situation last January, February was very, very bad compared to what it is today. So obviously, the industry wanted us to not to oppose the government removing the anti-dumping duty. Until last year, there was an anti-dumping duty on the Chinese electrodes. So to support the Indian industry, we also supported that the government withdraws the anti-dumping duty, which they did. So that has resulted into a lot of imports coming into the non-UHP segment. But you're right. I mean, to the extent that the non-UHP segment is, which is a small segment, to that extent, the Chinese electrodes are now coming in. And as we just explained,
right,
probably the demand in China and the new steel capacities coming in, probably there's a mismatch in terms of timing. Obviously, a brownfield expansion of an existing graphite plant will take much less time than a newly built greenfield steel plant. So we expect that if this is our understanding, if this is correct, then it's a matter of maybe 6 months, 9 months before we see a lot of these electrodes, non-UHP electrodes, getting consumed within China.
Right, sir. Right. And sir, just to be slightly more clear on this from your understanding point of view, is that nothing of that sort has taken place in China, wherein they have also started making UHP and competing in that segment, right? So whatever exports would have gone up, it's largely in the non-UHP. It's the UHP segment is still not impacted because of the Chinese developments, right? Is that understanding correct?
You're absolutely right.
Okay, sure, sir. Sure. Thank you, sir. That's all from my side, and best of luck.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Jimesh Sanghvi from Principal Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Congrats on a good set of numbers. So just wanted your sense on the historical differential between the HP and the UHP prices as to what was the premium earlier and where it stands today.
See, if my guess is right, I won't remember the historical number, but in the last 12 months or 18 months, on the back of a very, very strong demand, there was practically no difference between HP and UHP.
Right.
And in the past, my guess is it must have been like 15-20%. But again, if we go back into 2015-16, when the electrode prices were extremely subdued, so probably even at that time there was probably very little difference between UHP and non-UHP. So there is not one certain data which I can provide you on that, but obviously the non-UHP electrode by definition is non-ultra high power, and it doesn't need the needle coke. It needs a coke which is locally available in India, which is not of the same quality, much lower quality. So obviously there's a difference in the raw material cost. So to that extent, the cost of production of non-UHP electrode is cheaper.
Right. And so secondly, there have been reports about Shanghai Baosteel Chemicals and Fangra Carbon kind of setting up a 1 lakh ton UHP grade capacity in China. So any update on that which you would like to share too? Because this kinds of shows that probably the Chinese manufacturers also have the ability to manufacture UHP grade electrodes.
You see, while it will be not proper for me to comment on a specific name that you just said, but in general, I can repeat what I have been repeating answering similar questions in the past 1.5 years. China doesn't have the technology for UHP, and I don't think it is that easy to get this technology. You need a lot of time. You'll need a company behind you with a wealth of experience of how to produce UHP. It is not just about raw material. Obviously, if we can buy needle coke, everybody in China can also buy needle coke. So it's not just the availability of raw material. It is basically the technology to produce UHP. And I don't think China is any closer getting this technology as it was in the last so many years.
Fine. And so, what will be the price differential as on today between UHP grade electrode and an HP grade electrode that we are selling?
I mean, for competitive reasons, I wouldn't like to give a specific number. And I mean, we have to also look at the spread between the electrode price and the coke which we use to make that product. What I can say is that the HP grade, as I said just 5 minutes before, that UHP prices continue to be strong. What I can say that yes, our HP prices, which are 20% of our production, are impacted by these increasing exports out of China, which you mentioned. I think the previous gentleman mentioned the previous. We are definitely impacted on those prices. And to give you a number, I mean, they are definitely 40% down for this 20% portion of our business.
Fine, sir. And so lastly, if you can share the breakup of the spot volumes and the long-term volumes that we have sold during the quarter.
During the quarter now, I mean, the spot thing was true till about a quarter back when there was those spikes when we were selling at, I mean, we sold a lot of tonnage, 7,000-8,000 tons, above $20,000 even to several countries. So that part is over. It is more a stable environment. So we can say that now there's nothing like a spot pricing. In fact, now we are getting into 3 months or up to, let's say, 6 months in exports in regular contracts.
Fine, sir. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Manish Sonthalia from Motilal Oswal. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, sir. So, 2 questions. One is that how much production will we do in Q4? I mean, now that we have to find a market for the Iran exports which have gone, how much production and sales would be possible in Q4? And the second question is that, there have been reports that this HP exports coming out of China is finding acceptability with even Indian producers, and they are substituting UHP for HP. I mean, how much of a truth is there in this fact? Because obviously HP imports are at a much lower prices than what the UHP is. So is there an element of substitutability which is finding acceptability in Indian market?
Okay, I'll answer both the questions. Your first question was that what is going to be our production in Q4. We believe it should be in the high 80s. That is answer to your question number 1. Question number 2, which you had, was that these HP electrodes coming in China are substituting in the UHP. To that, I should say an emphatic no, because that is not possible. Because then it could happen in any furnace of the world, and for the simple reason that ultra high power grade electrodes are used in large furnaces, which are melting furnaces. And there's a ladle furnace which is supporting the electric arc furnace, which is used for refining, which does not have as much stringent demand on the electrode. That is where HP electrodes are used. So they are not actually switchable. They are coming in. The electrode imports into India are coming in, are all going for ladle furnaces, and also to some small furnaces, mainly used by alloy steel producers, because the furnaces tend to be small, because the heat sizes tend to be small. So they really don't need that economies of scale justifying large furnaces which need large UHP electrodes.
Manish, I'll try to just clarify further. These electrodes, this 20-25% segment non-UHP that we sell, goes to a different kind of furnace compared to the UHP, which is like 75-80% of our business. So if your question is that the bigger furnace where the UHP electrodes are required can use non-UHP, answer to that is a very emphatic no. And as I just clarified, we were approached by the steel industry, we were approached by the government of India, and accordingly they removed this anti-dumping duty. So it's not that these non-UHP electrodes have just started coming in from China, except for a brief period of about a year and a half or 2 years, when the anti-dumping duty was imposed, and the anti-dumping duties at that time, when the electrode prices were very low, were as much as 40-45%. So in that backdrop, those imports did stop. it is not new that these non-UHP electrodes have suddenly started coming from China. They've always been there, except for this brief period of 12 or 18 months, when we had requested for this anti-dumping duty, and the government agreed with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sameer Kapadia from Rockstone Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for taking my question. My first question is almost 70% of our exports goes to various countries. So which are the major markets which the company exports to? And my second question is, are there any upcoming capacities in the graphite electrodes?
Yeah, I'll take this question. See, as HEG, we are very well diversified in our customer base globally. So there is not one or two countries where our exports are going. We are exporting to more than 30 countries, including Americas, including many of the countries in Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia, even Russia. So if you can take it, let's say, equally spread across continents, barring a few percentage here and there. It's not that we are localized or we are depending on one particular region or country. We are quite, evenly spread, I would say.
Okay, got it. And are there any upcoming graphite electrode capacity which are coming up?
No, not from the world majors. None of them have announced any capacity expansion. No.
Okay, and secondly, in regards with the needle coke situations whereby, there is some supply constraint. So by when do you expect it, the new capacity coming in? Because I think post 3 years' time, we would also require the additional raw material like needle.
Yeah, true. You're right. But that is something which needle coke suppliers are watching. The major one, Phillips 66, has already done that small bottlenecking. The Japanese do not seem to be planning any expansion. So maybe they are also watching the market because for them it's a very big investment and takes 5-6 years to come and costs more than $1 billion. So I'm sure they must be watching the situation.
So then how does the company expect to meet its needle coke requirement once the capex has been done? Because you said it would take 5 to 6 years, to bring up any new capacity.
When the needle coke becomes available, we should be found ready. Let me put it this way. We should not be found wanting that needle coke becomes available and then we go looking for expansion.
Okay, but then the timing would match, are you trying to say?
Even if it doesn't, at least we are upgrading our facilities. We are doing a lot of things here. So it would be worth it.
Okay, fine. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Prahlad Jain, a retail investor. Please go ahead.
Sir, congratulations to you, all the HEG employees and investors on another stellar quarter.
Thank you.
And sir, I had a few questions. One is that in terms of channel checks are confirming that the UHP GE pricing has been contracted with Indian steel makers for Q4 at 10 to 15% lower rates. Do we have this newer contract for Q4 for export prices also lower?
If you talk about India, we have a 10 to, you're comparing Q3 to Q4. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. So that 10%, yeah, that's fine. That's more or less, the ballpark figure is correct. And
right. So do we have a similar lower contract for Q4 on export prices, or do we have similar to Q3 prices?
See, we are basically an international supplier of electrode. Our share of our total sales is no more than about 25-30% in India. So Indian prices and international prices tend to be similar. There has never been a time that there is a large difference between India and exports. So whatever is our export price and whatever is our domestic price is more or less virtually similar. As there is practically zero duty on imports, electrodes into India. So obviously, we cannot keep a higher price in India and risk imports coming into our country.
Right, sir, I understand. So this 10 to 15% lower rate that we have contracted, this is going to affect our exports as well. That is what I was asking about, or whether they are only for the Indian steel makers.
See, as the spikes of that electrode, there was a combination. There are some spot orders in the last quarters, and then there are some contracted ones. So if you amalgamate both of them, there would be somewhat a decline from between Q3 and Q4 in global prices as well. But as we are still booking, we cannot, it's difficult for us to quantify how much that it is going to be, whether it's going to be 10% or 12%. We really can't quantify at this stage because we still have some orders to book between now and till March end.
Right, sir. So in terms of margins, would we be able to sustain our margins? I believe we came from our EBITDA margins decreased by 5% this quarter compared to Q2, and our net profit margins, PAT margins were down by 4%. So would we be able to maintain similar margins going into Q4, or would we see a reduction in margins?
No, obviously not. I mean, as we just said, the export prices, UHP prices are down. The non-UHP prices are, of course, much more down compared to the UHP. So obviously we will not be able to maintain the margins, but obviously the margins that we have seen in the last 3 quarters are nowhere close to a normal margin than one can expect for a very long time. So if the answer to your question is, of course, it will be impacted.
Okay, understood, sir. So in terms of, Mr. Gulati did mention on TV that in terms of the contracts, we are still looking at overall contracts being sold for Q4. Is this normal, or is there a difference in terms of demand and supply that we have seen? Because we have not heard something similar for previous quarters. Previously, what we have been hearing is we always had 3 to 6 months earlier, we used to book all the contracts. But this time it is like we're still booking contracts. So is it a demand-supply situation that is different this time?
No, I'll explain this very well because I'm facing this. You see, the last 2 quarters, there was so much of panic buying by our customers. You know, the company which was keeping 1 month of inventory wanted to keep 2, but the company which was keeping 2 wanted to keep 3. So this quarter is a quarter of correction. So the long-term demand remains where it is. And we, as you know, we have said earlier also that we were booking quarter by quarter. So we have to just give our customers a little time to, bring their inventory levels to normal. Otherwise, the demand is very much there. We can see how much steel they are making, and we're just giving them some time to correct their positions. That's all. So that is why, as I said, we were booking quarter by quarter. It should have been actually booked, but it is going slightly slow. But we hope to book it as we go along up till March.
Okay, thank you, sir. And my next question was that we actually did 85% utilization for quarter 2 versus 82% utilization for quarter 3. So there was a drop of 3% utilization overall. Are we looking at a drop in utilization in Q4? Are we looking at similar utilization or higher utilizations?
No, we'll be in high 80s, and I can clarify because I have the figures in front of me. Those that was not 85, that was less than that. That was sales related. So anyway, so let's stick to that 82% in Q3 and high 80s in Q4. So there's no drop as such.
Okay, good enough. And sir, in terms of NC, now we are actually seeing that, or we are hearing that rates have softened in terms of UHP. There is still demand, but rates are not as high as they were before. NCs that has been coming in, NC has been 1,000 plus quarter on quarter. Do we see this continuing across, or do we feel that NC rates have actually peaked overall?
It's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, we have just started getting the new needle coke from January onwards. And as we said, these prices are frozen for the first 6 months.
So the next negotiation will only happen in April, May, closer to the time of second quarter, let's say July. So until then, we will have very little to tell you on the needle coke front, because there are only 2 or 3 major suppliers. Except these 2-3, I mean, there is no way to estimate as to what the needle coke prices could be.
I understood, sir. But what is your frank opinion? Because the needle coke actually started with somewhere around $500 per ton and has now gone to $4,500 per ton in a year or so. Where do we see this bottoming out overall? Or what's your opinion?
So, you see, going by 500 to 4,000, if you look at electrode prices were like 2,000. And our average for the last 3 quarters is 7-8x. It could be a couple of 100,000 tons were at 9x, 10x also. So everything stabilizes at certain level, and I don't think we don't expect any increase in the coke at all. I mean, there should be some softening, but again, I'm just giving my guess. I have no reason to say what I'm saying. But just to clarify your point about demand, see, if we were seeing any softening of demand, we would be reconsidering our decision on expansion. We are going ahead, as I just said, we are committed to expanding this plant by 20,000 tons. And as we have been saying in the past, until today, we haven't heard anybody else announcing any expansion. And given that this expansion itself is going to be about 3 years from today, and this constitutes about 3% of the total capacity of the world of electrodes. So we don't see any issues in being able to, I mean, if we are as pessimistic as saying that in 3 years' time, the steel capacities or steel demand or steel production will not even increase by 3% in 3 years, only then we will have a problem in selling these 20,000 tons, because we are pretty sure that anybody else who will follow and announce any new expansions or debottlenecking, he will also not take less than 3 years' time. I mean, that's a very standard time that any graphite electrode plants will take to debottleneck.
Right, sir. So basically, Graphtech also has held its St. Mary's plant. They're actually ready, but they're not coming to the market because of needle coke getting needle coke as well as the pricing of needle coke. That is one thing. However, the capacity is there. So Graphtech has the capacity. Showa is looking at 30,000 additional capacity as well. The capacity is there. It's only about needle coke at this point of time, wherein it is not coming online. So we'll probably need to look at needle coke has been available 3 years down the line. As we see, there is no debottlenecking happening, but we'll probably need to be certain, as you would have done a survey before looking forward to the expansion, that needle coke will be available. Otherwise, what will happen is, currently we are at 80% utilization. After the capacity expansion, we will come to a 60% utilization.
So, what you are saying logically is absolutely correct. But we haven't heard of any 30,000 ton plan of Showa, as you just said. I mean, whatever they have done, it was already done last year. They had expanded their plant they had expanded one of their plants in US about 3-4 years ago, and they were not producing at even very close to high capacities. So on the back of a very strong demand, they've increased production recently last year because of the demand situation. But we haven't heard of any new expansion being announced by anybody, as I said, including Showa. As far as Graphtech is concerned, obviously I cannot comment on what they are doing, but from all the public information, all their announcement, it doesn't seem that they're ready to restart St. Mary's in a short period of time.
Right. So, sir, what would happen in your opinion when Fangda announced capacity as well as UHP capacity being announced in China, which may actually come online in 2020 or so? Graphtec starts the St. Mary's plant, and we see expansion overall in the UHP segment. What happens 2-3 years down the line when we expand as well as many other people expand and we have UHP capacity? Are we saying whatever capacity news that we are hearing from China is that Chinese material UHP is certainly not going to be consumed at all across the world? It's not really comparable at all. Are we saying that time and again? Because we are hearing a lot of capacities coming up in China.
See, I answered this exact question about 5 minutes ago. There's a lot of confusion when we talk about China and UHP. Let me clarify once again that the 75 to 80% production that we do of the ultra high power is not the same UHP. It should not even be compared with the Chinese UHP that we are talking about. So it's a totally two different kind of products. And again, I should not be commenting upon somebody who has just announced an expansion or a new plant, but they are going to produce the same thing which they have been producing for the last many years. And the reason I am saying is that the new steel capacities that China is building is exactly the same what they have had for the last many years. So those plants which are now starting production in the steel segment are going to require the same electrode, the same quality of electrode which they have been consuming up till now. So to answer your question, I mean, we are really not worried about what somebody in China is doing, because we still compete with China only on the last 20-25% segment of the world market of graphite.
Understood, sir. I basically wanted to understand from a capacity expansion perspective, you are setting up a dedicated nipple line. How does that contribute overall to our bottom line? Is it like currently we don't make the nipples, or we are looking at a dedicated nipple line so that we can make more nipples for other electrodes as well?
No, nothing like that at all. Basically, we are building, you can call it a nipple line, whatever line it is, but that dedicated nipple production that we are planning to do in the same compound where the electrode production is, that in turn frees up our existing capacity by about 20,000 tons. So the nipple plant is not going to produce more nipples than what we need, but it does free up enough capacity in the existing plant for about 20,000 tons of electrodes. So after the expansion, the capacity for electrodes and nipples will be about 100,000 tons.
Okay, so is it not that our expansion is for 20,000 and then we free up another 20,000, making it 40,000? It's not like that?
Not at all. Our total, you see, electrode and nipple go hand to hand. I mean, a piece of electrode without a piece of nipple is of no use. So when you sell electrode, you necessarily sell one piece of electrode and one piece of nipple. So the total capacity of electrode plus nipple goes up from, currently our capacity is 80,000 tons of electrode and nipple, and post-expansion it will be 100,000 tons.
Okay, understood, sir. And that is 3 years down the line, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sir, I had one last question so that others do get the time to ask questions as well. I have one last question. This has been on my mind for a long time. HEG actually would have 2,000 plus crores on books even after buyback, after this quarter. Last quarter 2 conference call, we had talked about anode material in battery space that HEG is looking at seriously. So do we have any update on that? Are we looking at that line, or are we looking at any other EPS accretive acquisitions? Because the stock market as well as investors are actually looking at something more in terms of EPS accretive businesses that we can do with the cash on books that we have.
See, 750 crores out of that is going to be spent pretty soon with our buyback. About 1,200 crores is being internally funded. This expansion, which is going to cost 1,200 crores, is all internally funded. And of course, for the last year or so, we have been looking at a lot of other opportunities, including some which is available publicly in the NCLT place. So there is nothing very specific. We are not yet at that stage that we can tell you anything very specific about what we are looking at because there's a lot of things in progress. There's a lot of work in progress, let us say, and we'll obviously announce it and tell you whenever we are close to that.
Understood, sir. Thank you so much, and congratulations again to you and all the HEG employees.
Thank you, Ji.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Devang Sangvi from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Congrats on good set of numbers. My question is regarding needle coke. The supplies to the EV side is around 10 to 15%, or has recently increased in last, say, 6 months or what? Any comments on the same?
EV side.
See, the coke which is used by lithium for the lithium application is actually not needle coke. It doesn't actually hurt that capacity. But the number which you are saying, 10 to 15%, and yeah, we heard that number. But again, as I said, it doesn't matter to or affect the needle coke availability for electrode making.
Okay. And the prices we kind of get in Q4 FY19, do we expect the similar trend to continue for FY20? Any comments on the same?
I think whatever we get for Q4 will extend into 2019 balance quarters for the UHP side.
On the UHP side, for the next year, I was probably asking for FY20, are we confident that?
Yeah, for the next year. Yeah, for the next year, UHP would definitely sustain. HP, we are just watching the situation. What is the extra inventory flowing out of China? When will that stop? When will that happen? We can't comment much on that, but UHP will stay.
UHP will be sustained.
Through the year, yeah, that's what we think.
Okay. And though a bit early, but any guidance on FY20 utilization levels? Because we will have additional needle coke after Phillips 66 has expanded capacity. So do we expect?
It's going to be 90%. That's the plan. 90%. 90%
utilization, sir. Thank you, sir, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sanjay Jain from Motilal Oswal Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, congratulations on a good set of number. First question is on what is our cash surplus as of the 31st December?
As on 31st December, it was approximately 1,500 CR, and as on date, it is 1,900 CR.
Okay. And second question is on buyback. I was just wondering, there is a big gap between buyback price and the current market price. Instead of tendering process, shouldn't we go through market operations and buy from markets? We can buy more shares for the same money.
You see, this decision of buyback and the pricing and everything happened in end of November. I think if I remember correctly, in the board meeting that we held, at that time the prices were close to 4,300 to 4,400. So at that time, a premium of about 22-23%, which is what the board considered as 5,500 rupees of a buyback. That looked like a very normal number, because if you go through all the buybacks of the last 12 to 18 months, the buybacks have normally been between 15 and 25% premium. So obviously the board took a decision, took a view based on the market price on that day. And so obviously, for whatever reason, the prices have dropped. The geopolitical situation is no more what it was 2 months ago. So given that, and once we have announced the buyback, I don't know even if we wanted to, if SEBI rules will allow us to revisit the numbers. So we just have to go through that.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Samir Kapadia from Rockstar Capital. Please go ahead.
Just one couple of follow-up questions. We do not export to China. Is that understanding right?
We do export, but that quantity is insignificant. Like 500, 600 tons a year is not much.
So the switch which is happening between like in the Chinese market whereby blast furnace to electric arc furnace, so we won't be actually benefiting out of those things.
No, because there is a plethora of supplies already there, and the furnaces which are coming are not using, most of them are not going to be using the large diameter electrodes like 28 inches or 30 inches. So they have abundant supply of their own electrodes. So there wouldn't be, we don't think there's going to be any benefit to HEG from their electric arc furnace production.
And lastly, in regards with this Iran ban which has happened, how and where does the company seek to place this additional 8 to 10% kind of a production? Which market it would be?
Actually, we have to spread it across our base, across our spread. We have to try in every country to increase the width and depth of that, our presence in that country. I mean, increase more customers in a country where we are already present, or try to increase market share with our existing customers. So that has to be absorbed by our other markets.
Okay. And lastly, in regards with the cost of production, where do we stand in terms of our peers? Are we among the lower end side, or like the cost of production is higher compared to the other players?
See, if we look at our cost of production, yes, we are one of the lowest, I would say. If you look at Japanese, we are definitely lower. There's no doubt about it. If you look at the plants which exist in Europe, barring about one, I think we are lower than them. We are lower than Graftex cost of production. So we are one of the lowest cost producers in the UHP category of these 4 or 5 players.
Can you just give us a guidance in terms of what percentage lower it would be from the other players, if possible?
I mean, in dollars per ton, really cannot say, but because it depends from plant to plant. I don't have any ready figures with me as those changes year after year. I cannot make a comment, but yes, we are certainly lower than these Japanese producers, Graftex, some European plants.
And we understand, this margins which we are currently having are on a very higher side. So what would be the sustainable margins that we can expect in the long run? Any guidance on that part?
I mean, it's really difficult to say. It is dependent on so many factors. It depends on what prices the UHP, what needle coke prices would come. It's dependent on so many factors. The pricing, the raw material pricing. It's very hard to say what kind of margins will be there going forward, but surely better than most of the industries.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Arvind Sharma, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Good, thanks. First of all, congratulations for the wonderful set of numbers. So I have two main questions. I would just like to understand.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Sharma, we will request you to use the handset, please, or maybe keep the mouthpiece a bit away from you.
Yeah. Is it clear now? Hello?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir. First of all, congratulations for the good set of numbers.
Yeah, thank you.
I would like to understand, like if somebody is producing steel via the UHP grade and a non-UHP grade, what is the difference between the quality and the cost of production of that steel?
No, either you make steel through the UHP grade or you make steel through the HP grade. So it's not that I have a furnace they're not substitutable. See, you have a furnace. It's a design furnace. There's a transformer, and that transformer has to give certain energy, and the electrode can take on that much energy for which it has to be capable. That is why it is UHP. So the whole system the steel plant is designed in that way that it is prescribed by the furnace supplier, and you cannot say what quality or how much steel they can make using UHP or HP. It's not substitutable.
No, I just wanted to understand, like, if you use UHP to produce steel, will the quality be good as compared to a non-UHP one? And will the cost be like comparable or more than the non-UHP one?
Okay, I'll explain this question. If you have a 200-ton furnace, which is supposed to churn out 200 tons of steel every 40 minutes, there has to be a transformer which will be a 140 megawatt and which will throw in energy at the rate of 100 kiloamps, which that electrode should be able to withstand. Now compare it with a 30-ton furnace using a 400 electrode, 16-inch electrode, and which has to just melt, 20 tons in an hour or so. There you can use a low power electrode. That is the difference between the ultra high power grade and the low power grade. So it is economies of scale. Now you don't make steel in buckets anymore. You have to make steel in very large furnaces.
Okay, so the follow-up question for this is because China is, increasing the steel capacity and using a non-UHP grade electrode. So will the cost of production of Chinese steel will be less than what the other, countries are producing? If that is the case, if in case they don't use it for local consumption and they put it out in the world, right? So will they have more competitive prices in that case?
It is exactly the other way around. Their cost of production will be more. If you look at the papers, there was some release that they are setting some 105 million metric tons with 66 plants. So if you divide, an average plant would be making 650,000 tons, and now you don't set up plants of that production capacity. So if your batch sizes are lower, your small plants, your cost of production is actually higher.
Okay. Thank you. And so one more thing is that regarding the scrap, world over it is increasing rapidly, specifically in China and even, in other countries. Maybe in India also by 2020 because of the BS6, we might see that increase. So if you produce steel via scrap because of a recent issue regarding the iron ore, issue which has come up. So if you produce via scrap route, you are only, you can only produce it by using the UHP grade. Is that understanding correct?
No, again, that has got nothing to do with that. If a smaller furnace can use scrap, can use other materials, so it's basically on the size of the furnace. So it's got nothing to UHP and HP. Kindly do not relate it with the availability of scrap. So it actually depends upon the size of your furnace or the size of your plant.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. And my last question will be more on the cash utilization plan. I know you have already answered it, but are you looking, both ways? For example, the backward integration as well as the forward integration for your kind of business?
Currently, we've just announced an expansion of the electrode business, and as I said, there's a lot of work in progress. Apart from electrode in some different areas where we are still not at a stage where we can really talk about it.
Okay. The last time actually that anode question I asked and you said you already have some discussion going on within the company on that level. Just a small curious question which I have is that regarding the graphite fines, because you are already making graphite electrodes and there are some residue which can easily be sold to anode manufacturers across the world. For example, you can do more cross-selling to countries where you export, and if they are producing anodes, material, they can easily use those graphite fines and, maybe you have another product to sell and add another revenue stream. So is that something which you are already thinking or you have some progress, on that line from the last Concall?
No, the graphite fines are obviously being sold. They are not only sold in India, we're exporting a lot of our graphite fines for various uses. So probably one of the uses, what you just mentioned in the cathodes and anodes. And so what probably you are trying to ask is, we have been talking about venturing into an area where we will produce a couple of things which go into the lithium-ion batteries.
Exactly.
So that is what I said that is what I meant when I said that there are a couple of things which are still in the work in progress, and we are looking at it seriously.
Great, sir. Okay, thank you very much for this, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Devang Sangvi from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for the follow-up. What I was seeing is there is a strong traction in steel production in US, and the US majorly is a EF producer. So have you seen some amount of incremental demand from US this year, this calendar year, CY19?
You're right. I mean, US produces about 70% of its steel through electric arc furnace. So in terms of percentage, it is the largest electric arc furnace production country. And in the past year or so, they have announced about 6 million tons of additional electric arc furnace capacities. So that is one country where the growth is going to be the largest in terms of demand. And we have been exporting to US for last 15 to 20 years. So we have a fairly good knowledge of the country. We are fairly strongly represented in some of the large customers in electrode. And a lot of these capacities which are being created, this additional 6 million ton, is also being created by some of our existing customers.
So this can actually partially compensate for the Iran volume loss. That's fair volume to estimate. Sorry, fair judgment to estimate.
I mean, not all. I mean, obviously, we said we sell about 7-8%. Our exports to Iran constituted about 7-8%. And so whatever we will get out of this additional demand of additional capacity of US coming up, it cannot compensate. But there is enough growth happening. I mean, even if there is a 2 to 3% of growth happening in the electric arc furnace around the world, it shouldn't be a problem finding a market for another 5,000-6,000 tons, which we have lost due to Iran.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Payal Goenka from Ratnabali Investments. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, all my questions are answered. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
The next question is from the line of Manoj Kulchandani, from an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Congratulations on the fantastic set of numbers. Hello.
Yeah, thanks. Please.
Yeah. I think the majority of the questions have been answered. I just have a query. Recently, Tokai has gone on record stating that nearly 20% of the overall sales will be shifting to a NC surcharge sale contract, and in future they see nearly 50% of the contracts to have a NC surcharge. Is HEG thinking along those lines? And because according to me, this will bring stability to future earnings, and the market will view the stock more favorably.
Yeah, actually, that is what Tokai is trying to do, but it is being met with, a lukewarm response. Because what they are trying to do is they are trying to index it to the future price of needle coke, which customers are not wanting to sign on those. So they're trying. I mean, but we would have preferred that such kind of a mechanism. But I mean, the way customers are watching the market, I don't think we do not want to come up with such idea which is not accepted well. I don't think Tokai is being very successful in that.
Okay. Also, sir, in the previous Concall, you had mentioned that NC is required only for UHP grade. So basically, what is the raw material which is required for the lower grades, and is it possible to actually increase our utilization by actually making more of the HP grade? So basically, it will add on to our bottom line, with a higher profit.
See, capacity is subject to the product mix. When you make lower sizes, your capacity to make that drops actually. If you're making a large size of 28 inches or a 30-inch electrode, if you had all the needle coke available, it gives a different set of number provided, or as compared to what you make if you have to make a lot of small sizes. So it drags down the capacity. The product mix is very important. So it's not that we can make all of it by small sizes. That will drag it down even further. So it's a balance.
Okay, so the 82% now is basically with the plant working on full tilt. Is that it?
Yeah, no, with the current product mix.
With the current product mix.
With which is some of the needle coke we have and the balance of the small sizes we make.
Okay, balance small. Okay, so it's basically for the buyback. I mean, are the promoters intending on participating in it, and up to what extent? Can you give some clarity on the same, please?
Yeah, promoters are participating 50% of their current holding in the buyback.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. That's all on my end. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Bharat Jain, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Bharat Jain, and thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Moderator. And I'd like to congratulate Mr. Jhunjhunwala and the entire team of HEG for the accomplishments. My question is that the minority investors at large have certain concerns, and there is a lot of cloud over the prospects of the future. And the only question in the most minor form I would like to ask Mr. Jhunjhunwala is that what would he like to tell the minority investors at large?
What was your question about, especially about the minority and not the large shareholders?
I'm just talking about the retail investors, sir. They're a little concerned about, although not everybody calculates the intrinsic value of the business, but we've done really well over the gone quarter, and since there is a earnings lag in the quarter, so will we be able to? How do you see the prospects going forward, 12 months to 24 months from now? Although you've clarified that the demand seems to be very good, but needle coke seems to be hurting us somewhere. And what reassuring words would you like to tell all the minority investors out there?
I don't think we said that needle coke is a concern. I mean, we only said that needle coke, there is not enough needle coke available in the market, but much more than the needle coke prices which have gone up, the electrode prices have gone up much, much more than that. So that is not a concern. Just to give you a very general answer to what you just asked, currently we believe that the supply demand is absolutely in balance. I mean, that capacity is about 700,000 tons. If you look at the total capacity of the electrode production all over the world, it is about 700,000 tons. And the demand in the whole of 2018 and maybe 2019 is also very, very close to 700,000 tons. And that is how the prices went up by 6, 7, 8x in the last 2 years. And it's a very technology-oriented industry. There are very strong barriers to entry. We came into this business in 1977, and we are the last new company to have entered this business in the world.
Yes, sir.
So entry barriers are really strong, and it's not easy for a newcomer to come into this business and enter the market. And even a brownfield expansion, I mean, forget about the greenfield, even a brownfield expansion that we have announced is taking us about 3 years to build. And it will surely be even more in a foreign country.
Yes, sir.
If it is 3 years in India, it will definitely be more given the cost and given the labor constraint and everything that you have in other part of the world. So in the next 3 years, as of now, nobody has announced any new expansion or debottlenecking except.
So would you say that we are bullish on the graphite story, sir? Is it still intact?
On the graphite.
No, what I'm only trying to explain is that currently, if the demand supply is absolutely in balance and there is only 20,000 tons of new expansion likely to come in 3 years' time, this 20,000 tons on a current capacity and demand of 700,000 tons is about 3%.
Yes, sir.
So even if we believe that the world is going to grow by just about 1% every year for the next 3 years, so that is where the equation is. We have taken this decision simply on this view that even if we take a very realistic number of 1.5 to 2% growth of the world in the next 3 years, what we are adding in the market is only 3% in 3 years.
Okay, sir.
Now, we could be terribly wrong if geopolitical situation changes. If there's a degrowth in the whole world in the next 3-4 years, then obviously our decision can be questioned 3 years down the road.
Okay, sir. So one question that I would like to ask also is that we mentioned in the last Concall that we've become a debt-free company. So we continue to remain a debt-free company for the short term or for the long term of a working capital? How would you say that? How would you say that as to we are a debt-free company in terms of the long term or the short term?
For the next couple of years, foreseeable future, it will remain a debt-free company. Obviously, as one of your colleagues just asked this question, if we do decide to venture into an area, which is, there are a couple of areas that we are looking at. So depending upon which one looks feasible, which one looks interesting from the business point of view, and how much money will be required to be diverted into that new area, it'll all depend on that.
Sure, sir. And sir, like as the needle coke prices have been going higher because there's a surge on the demand side from electric vehicles, would that take the cost out of hand for us as well, for all the graphite players around the world? Because there's limited availability of needle coke at the moment, and demand seems to be rising for electric vehicles, and we are heavily dependent on needle coke as well. So your take on that, sir?
No.
Would the costs not grow higher?
No, as my colleague just clarified, this particular grade of needle coke that the graphite industry needs is not going anywhere for the lithium-ion batteries or anything else. This is only required for the graphite industry.
Okay, sir. And one question on the buyback side. I know there's been many questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the buyback, sir, it's very heartening as a minority investor to actually that the management is going ahead with the buyback despite the recent drop in price. As Warren Buffett mentioned that what buybacks are generally done, and when a buybacks are generally done, the management buys back quite the amount of intrinsic value. So would the management participating in the buyback is somewhere a question that the minority is worried about. So what would you have to say on that, sir?
No, I don't know why this question is a question mark or people are worried about it. It's all in the public domain. Yes, on day one when the board took this decision, the day one the postal ballots happened, it's very clearly mentioned that yes, promoters are participating.
To the extent of 50% of their holdings,
Is it 15 or 50?
50 of their current holding. Currently, promoters' stake is 61%, and out of that, promoters are participating to the extent of 50%. Okay. Great, sir. But thank you so much, sir, and we really look forward to you leading the way, and we're extremely grateful for the entire management and all the employees of HEG, and working and bringing a lot of prosperity. Thank you very much, and I wish you very well. And also, before I go, I just wanted to ask that do you encourage investors coming down to your office and meeting with the management, like young investors like myself, if we want to come and meet you all?
That request.
Although there are con calls, but other than the AGM, would you encourage that?
No, we haven't. We have never been requested like we're asking for. But if there are,
may I request you then? May I be the first one to do so?
There are a group of interested investors, serious investors. I mean, why not? I mean, we can do a meeting in Bombay or Delhi or wherever. I mean,
I'm Delhi, so you'd be very happy to know I visited your office once, and I'm very much interested in the aspects of the business as Warren Buffett says. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for taking the question.
Okay.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Keshav Harlalka from BHH Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thank you so much for taking my question. I just had a couple of 2-3 questions. First question is, will we get the buyback monies before 31st March 2019 for the buyback which has been announced?
See, I can only tell you the procedure. We have completed the ballots. The results of the AGM and the ballots are out. Okay. Our application to SEBI has gone about 10 days ago, and it all depends on SEBI now. I mean, whatever time they take to approve, that's the only thing that we are waiting for.
Got it. So secondly, I wanted to know about your dividend policy. Is there a dividend policy of giving out 30% of the earnings as dividends, sir?
It's an informal, it's a practice. I would not say a policy, but it has been in practice for the last many, many years.
Okay, so if I assume that you're going to earn 800 rupees as EPS for the full year, would you be giving us a final dividend of 200 plus rupees? Is that a fair assumption to make? Because you've dividend of 30 rupees.
I mean, I've already said what I needed to say. I mean, we have maintained 30-35%, and we should. I mean, there's no reason why we should reduce it.
Got it. So, secondly, from whatever conversation I've got so far, there's been broadly a drop of 15% in prices in the current quarter vis-a-vis last quarter. So, can we assume a profit of 700 to 750 crores band in the current quarter? Can you give some comments on that?
No, we are unfortunately constrained by various regulations not to talk about very specific numbers.
Got it. So the last question is, so in FY10 we had announced the capacity expansion from 66,000 tons to 80,000 metric tons. So, and we had concluded the capacity expansion, and in FY12 we had spent totally 275 crores. Am I right? To get the capacity expansion of 14,000 tons, we had spent 275 crores. Have I got my numbers right, sir?
It was more than that.
What was it?
One power plant also at that time, so that was also.
Okay. So, sir, when we are spending broadly 300 crores for a capacity expansion of 14,000 tons, why are we spending 1,200 crores for a capacity expansion of 20,000 tons? Can you give me some color on that?
No, you will need to be a graphite expert and come down to our office to understand that, and it's very complicated. I mean, you are comparing apples and oranges. What we are doing today and what we did 7 years ago are very, very different things.
Okay, because I remember FY 13-14 also somebody had asked in the conference call regarding the capex which you 2 years back somebody had asked in the Concall. So we are not very clear about it, but 1,200 crores is a bit out of it's on the higher side, so that's all I can say.
I mean, I can't go into the details of the technical things that we are doing, but what we are doing right now,
okay.
I mean, this is what it will cost you. I mean, if you are doing the best in the world, then this is what it is going to cost.
Okay.
And we are not wanting to compromise on the quality.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. That's it from my end.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of T. Vishwanath from Hetero Drugs. Please go ahead. T. Vishwanath from Hetero Drugs. Your line is unmuted. Please go to the question. T. Vishwanath from Hetero Drugs. Your line is unmuted. Please go to the question. As there's no response, we take the next question from the line of Subrata Sarkar from Mount Intra Finance. Please go ahead.
Hello. So good evening, sir. Just one view from you. Like Graphic India Concall has given on note they have come out that spot price has corrected from 15,000 to 12,000, whereas their long-term contract at around 9,700 to 9,800. So there is still the $3,000 kind of a difference. So like, what is our view on that? Will this spot price will also come down to this long-term contract level, or are we experiencing that kind of a price right now, and are we expecting this correction from here also, sir?
Well, you're right. Graphic has mentioned in their con call about the spot pricing being 12,000. I have read the transcript. And their long-term pricing in which they sold 60-65% of the volume is around 9,700. I mean, your figures are right. And that 30%, whatever remains, they intend to sell at 12,000. That's the intention. So, I mean, I really can't comment. But yes, the price level of what they're indicating, 12, that should be possible for them. I mean, long term, what will happen? Whether it will be close to their long-term contracted price or not, we can't really comment.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, due to time constraints, we take one last question. We take the question from the line of Parthiv Shah from Tracon Stock Brokers. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my question and congratulations on very good set of numbers. So my first question is, and it's rather more of curiosity sake, what is the scope of synthetic graphites and how could it be at all disruptive to your core business of ultra-high graphite electrodes?
I mean, synthetic graphite is a generic name. I mean, even our product chemically, you'll call it synthetic graphite. Why don't you do one thing? You give me a call on our office number, because this is, let's not put everybody on hold. And I will get this answered from one of our technical experts.
That will be very helpful. So, but last question. That's regarding your technology. Long back, I think you had sourced your technology from Pechney, France, right? And as I understand that all these European majors and US companies and Japanese companies have stopped sharing their technology for any new capex in graphite electrodes, especially the ultra-high power. So, sir, I'm just wondering, in your case, the new capex that is coming in the ultra-high power graphite electrodes, how difficult is it going to be for you to source that technology? Not only you already have in-house technology of the past, but can it be replicated again?
Yeah, absolutely. See, I mean, we since 1992, since we separated from our foreign partners, we have been actually investing in latest state-of-the-art equipment. If you come and visit our plant, you will see this is one of the best plants in the world, comparable to Japanese and comparable to the plants in Europe, Graftex plants. It is really one of the best. So, of course, it is. There has been a learning curve. We have been in this business for the last 40 years. And yes, we don't need any foreign partner, and it's very easy for us to, we just replicate what we have been doing. We have developed a very good understanding of this business.
Fantastic, sir. Thank you so much. That answers all my questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Ravi Jhunjhunwala for closing comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, friends, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next Concall, and with a good set of numbers. Thank you very much.